dude, I feel like everybody's right and everybody's wrong.
100%. Why is this important? Why are we even going here? He's helped a lot of guys. He's also not had success with a lot of guys.
Come in with a purpose, and they're very intentional with what they do and how they do it.
From the majors to the sandlot, baseball and softball share space in one place. Welcome to the farm system.
Fellas, and the ladies, welcome back to another episode of The Farm. We got the new setup going on. You know what I'm saying? We'll see how this thing works. You know what I'm saying? Me and Cody can look each other in the eyes. I can see sweat glisten down his head when I ask him the tough questions. We actually thought of also a different podcast idea that we're going to also talk about through today, a different segment. We might call it a dugout chatter or dugout talk or something like that. But we always talked about is like, I don't know about you guys, but what I used to do is whoever was hot at the time and they're hitting and they're like one of the best hitters in the team, you know, that guy hits a homer, that guy hits a double or something, that he's got the guy. Like he's hammering this dude. We'd all go stand next to him in the dugout and just listen to what his approach was, listen to what he was thinking, listen to just, you know, any idea, you know, maybe something he's picking up on in his delivery or something that's giving away a pitch. And so we were talking about that and we're like, man, we should, and so many different athletes, especially younger athletes, they don't know about the approach side and some of the things that actually go into creating the results, obviously, that you can get on the field just by understanding like a game strategy and things like that as well. So we thought we'd start talking through some certain at-bats, you know, how things progress throughout even some of our adult ball games, and also too knowing yourself as a hitter and how that actually applies. And I think it would help a lot of people. And we're kind of talking through some of that. So kind of what we were thinking about going through, you know?
Yeah. No, they actually, you know, Mookie Betts has his podcast and they had a bunch of the guys on the Dodgers doing it. I don't know if you saw that.
No, yeah, I saw a little bit of it, but
yeah, there was like one viral clip where Mookie was like, I was on first base and I ain't gonna lie, like, when you swung at that high fastball, I was like, oh, yeah, no, we ain't gonna get it, you swinging at that. And it was like, but then Freddie was talking about his at-bats, and like there's one podcast he was talking about, I think he's with the Travis and Jason Kelsey, the football players, and he was talking about the Grand Slam that he hit, and he was like, yeah, so I was watching video on how he was approaching Ohtani, because every time you face Ohtani, your back's up against the wall because he could go yard on you. And I knew that it was lefty, and like I thought they were going to walk Mookie just to get lefty. And I knew that he was throwing fastballs, four seams up and in to lefties, and then he was trying to throw cutter, slider, low and away. And so he's like, so really I eliminated the middle pitch and out because I knew it's going to be slider, cutter. And, you know, I was basically looking for a ball in.
Yeah,
because I knew that would be something I can handle. And it's like, you know, so many people thought that was like, you know, revolutionary. And it's like, well, that's really common talk at college levels, pro levels, just, you know, high level hitters talk like that approach. Hey, how's he setting you up? Stuff like that. And so
it's hard. It's hard to capture though, as like, again, why a lot of people don't know that side of the game. It's hard to capture in short form, which is obviously the king of things nowadays. Yeah. Right. So it's like, okay, I got a minute and 30 seconds. Let me give you this whole breakdown. You might get, even in that scenario where like Mookie's talking about that scenario, you know, that's one at bat, that's one pitch, that's one, you know, circumstance, right? Like there's so many layers of it. And then that's like, you know, the opposite side of that of like, I learned a lot of those things, especially as you start getting better and better competition, right? Like when you're younger, you're just hunting fastballs, middle. Yeah. And then even at upper levels, there's a time and a place where that's a good approach, right? And I know there's a lot of really good hitters that's what they're hunting. And so, but at the same time, we also say every hitter's different, but then we try to go out the same approach with every single hitter. And then, you know, again, for example, like me and Taylor were talking earlier, and I was giving out that example. I was like, yo, even me and Cody, we're different hitters and we have different skill sets. So there's certain things that I can rely on where like, and then there's certain things that Cody can rely on. In that situation, he's going to have a different approach than mine, and they might both lead to hits. And also in different scenarios, like where I'm batting in the lineup, you know, how they're approaching me. Also too, you know, like umpire considerations, like all of these things that like go into, you know, the angles that this guy is throwing from, you know, again, what type of pitches he throws. This is going to change a lot of things of strategy of like what I'm going to do at the plate and how I'm going to adjust, you know, throughout the game based on a number of these things. And you know, you kind of brought it up, and I'll let you kind of speak on this too, as you were talking to some of the high school hitters, and like how a lot of them, like some of these things were just like mind blowing to them, but just some basic combos. But I'll let you kind of open that up.
Yeah. So like I have a lot of high school hitters now that we've been here for a few years that are, I mean, they're playing varsity. They're just getting older. And so now they're not getting pitched to like a JV kid anymore, or a freshman or an eighth grader. Right. And so, you know, even in high school, just to be, you know, completely blunt and honest, like they got 2 pitches, and most of the time they got 1 good pitch, right? Most high schoolers, right? And like let's take out the couple kids that are D1 commits or whatever, right? Maybe they got 2 good pitches and they can show a third, but on average, most of the pitchers these kids are facing got two pitches, right?
Yeah.
And in particular, one of the
usually
kids
a dominant fastball, which
yeah,
is,
usually,
which is why they're so good in the first place. They just blow fastballs past high school hitters.
Yeah, right. And so usually it's 1 good, 2 all right, and they got to show me. And then if they throw a third, it's usually not great.
Okay,
for a high for a high schooler, I get why they're like, hey, he's got a good changeup, but in totality, you're like, once you get to college and you get perspective, you're like, man, that pitch was not good.
Literally before we move on, we did that the other day. Remember when we were seeing those? We had them facing the slider. One kid's like, I've never seen a slider like that in my life. I'm like, that's the most average slider that you're gonna see.
I know. Then Chewy comes in and was just like, yeah, well, you better get used to it. It was like,
because you got 91 mile an hour slider, and you're like, oh my goodness, turning left, a foot in front of home plate, and you're just like, oh my god, I look like an idiot.
It's like velo and hard break. But anyways, it's like one of the kids is hitting in the middle of the lineup. He's batting 3rd or 4th, right? And like I'm telling him, I'm like, hey, like, first of all, anytime you're in the middle of the lineup, don't expect to get pitched to like you're batting 7th or 8th anymore. And he was like, well, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, well, first of all, let's just stick with the theme of people like to get ahead, right? So I was like, you still may get a fastball. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be more of like a nibble, right? Maybe he's trying to throw it outside on you. But I was like, bro, like you're not getting cookies no more. And if you do,
I think you're breaking into 2 different two different sections here, right? Where you got global understanding of like a global approach, right? Like of understanding, okay, where are you batting in the lineup? How is that going to happen? But the thing that's even above that is you got to really, to understand your approach, you got to start thinking like a pitcher, right? Because that's how they're throwing to you, right? So a lot of times hitters are thinking like hitters and not thinking about how the pitcher is actually going to come after them. Yeah. And then it also helped me. I know you got some adult ball pitching in, but I actually two-wayed when I was in college. I don't know how much, if you got any innings in, but yeah, that. And then I also caught for a big part of my life. So it really helped me think like a pitcher because I know what I would throw against me. Like literally on the mound, I was my worst nightmare. If I had to face me, I would have been tough because how I pitched. So the same thing as you're mentioning there, right? There's 2 different areas. One, first step is you got to think like a pitcher. How would they pitch to me? And if you are not a pitcher and you're not a catcher, you need to get around some pitchers and catchers so that you can start to understand the game that way. Even if you're sitting next to your coach. I remember, again, back in the day, shout out to Papo, RIP, is I used to sit right next to Papo, one of our coaches, and he would, even in games would be on TV, and he would call out what the next pitch was going to be on TV, right? And he starts thinking about like, well, yeah, and he's like, you start thinking about how to set guys up. As a catcher, I called a lot of my own games. So because of that, and even when I was pitching, I called a lot of my own games. So I got used to learning how to set people up. Another plug as well is like MLB The Show. MLB The Show is a great option of like learning how to, I think like a pitcher and how I would throw to a guy in X, Y, and Z, right? If you're playing in game modes. And it's actually pretty realistic too, because now you can set the different settings where you have to approach certain zones. Like if I'm looking up and in and the guy throws a down and away slider, again, like it's going to be in the show, I'm going to end up missing and swinging and missing, quite a bit. So you can kind of set some of those things up and thinking about that. But I think that that's a good thing to think about, right? Is you have these global approaches, but a lot of people don't get past that. Yeah. They get to this global approach. Okay, I'm batting 7th, so I'm going to get this. Well, it's like, well, it's also like, for example, you're batting lead off, but you're only lead off the first at bat. Yeah. And then after that, you might come up second, or there's guys on second and third. Yeah. All of a sudden you get around the lineup and that's Ohtani, or that's, whoever that they have in the leadoff spot. And, that's a whole nother scenario comparatively to your first at bat of the game compared to way later in the game. And I think that's something, that's why, again, if you guys haven't noticed, a lot of the best hitters on the team, they used to bat third. Now they generally bat second. Yeah. It's a thing that they figured out within analytics, how often that person comes up, and then also how often the 2-hole comes up with guys in scoring position. Right. And the whole point is score more runs, is they realize that if they move the guy up one spot up, he came up in more situations where there was more scoring. And then also on top of that as well, he only bats second for the first, time through the lineup. And then after that, it's, in different scenarios. But anyways.
And it's kind of touching base on that, like global one, like again, being general. I mean, as a leadoff too, a lot of people think your job is to see pitches, have long at bats. And like, I remember too, I hated leadoff, but I was always fast. So people put me there and I struggled with it. And again, it was, everybody that knows baseball and has ever let off would probably agree that it's just a weird position. Like it's a weird spot in the lineup that a lot of people don't like being the first guy up, right?
Yeah.
And I just remember
the other hitters also sometimes will get upset. Like, dude, if you are aggressive early in the count, they're like, I didn't get to see nothing. I wanted to get up because they don't want to feel like they're lead off. And it's like, bro, like, you know, so that's also different. Obviously, different lead off guys are going to approach it.
Yeah, and exactly like what you're just saying. I mean, I think back to, again, like my final year playing is when I actually had a little bit of success leading off. I don't think I ever had success actually leading off just because I was so in my head about it. But I mean, I was probably like averaging 2-3 pitches and at bat. I wasn't really seeing a lot of pitches. I was swinging early. Because my mindset to it was, well, our job is to get to the bullpen, especially at the D2 level, really any level other than pros. You know, it's like, I'm trying to get to the bullpen.
Yeah, less power 5 is also tough. But
right. And it's like, you know, if I'm trying to get to the bullpen, a great way to get to the bullpen is just bang pitches. You know, like if I hit a bunch of doubles, like he's going to get out of the game, right? I don't need to go up there and battle and watch till 2 strikes and all this crap, right? But again, like you got your global approach of like, hey, know how they're going to approach you. But then also too, you know, kind of like what you said, like within different situations and stuff. And so, you know, with this particular hitter, we're talking about, hey, you come up with runners in scoring position, or at least a runner in scoring position a lot. And I was like, from my history of playing the game, I was just like, and this is anecdotal, I don't have the exact numbers. I was like, anecdotal evidence is like runner in scoring position. Usually my first pitch that I saw, curveball, slider. Most people that were threats in our lineup with a runner in scoring position, they're getting a curveball first pitch. They weren't getting a fastball because they don't want that runner to score.
And then obviously depends too, right? Do you got an open bag or you not have an open bag, right? Because you can have runners on second and third, but open bag, even if they fall behind, they're like, okay, well,
so
base is loaded here. I might, and again, especially less than 2 outs, I might have a chance to turn it up a play here, right? So it's like, I'm not worried about, I'm going to make this guy expand a little bit and like work for it. And especially if they're, you know, it matters where you are in the lineup, right? If you're 7-hole, right, and the guy behind you is 8-hole and they're not really worried about it, it's like, okay, well, you know, I'm not, or maybe you're like even worse, right? If you're like 5-hole or if you're the 4-hole, right? They know the guys behind you are just getting worse.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it's like, you know what, I'm going to make this guy expand a little bit and make him, you know, have to hit a really tough pitch. And that's why in those situations, especially young hitters, they come up in those situations and they get hyper aggressive. And then, you know, again, the first pitch change up, first pitch cutter, first pitch whatever, and then they end up hitting a double play ball, or they end up hitting a ball that, you know, hits right into the shift or where, you know, the defense is set up. And that's why you got to take in that as well, is understanding that at upper levels is like what actually creates runs. And again, what is the pitcher trying to do? If the pitcher wants a weak contact right now, well, then what would you throw if you were trying to get weak contact, right? How is the infield playing, right? Are they playing in and they're taking it away? Are the corners in? Is the middle playing halfway? Is the outfield, you know, shifted in a little bit because they're trying to cut down the run at home? You know, is he trying to get away from a deeper fly ball? You know, and then also too, again, like you said, like when we talked about some of the middle infielder stuff, right? It's like, you know, where's the shortstop playing? You know, a lot of times that's a good indicator, right? Like, is he really up on me or is he not paying any attention to me at second? You know, again, that's also kind of giving away what they're, you know, anticipating if it's a drag bunt or, you know, other scenarios that might come up too as well. You know?
No. And it, like exactly what you said with the infield too. It's like, the shortstop middle infield is always a good indicator as well. I mean, hey, are we pinching middle? Or are we playing the holes? Are we trying to hold them on to second? Right. It's like, you know, that gives me a lot of feedback too. And to also give context, this isn't, as long as we're going to make this conversation, this is like a split second thought that happens of like, I'm evaluate, I see, I feel, I've experienced it, thoughts done. It literally happens so quick in game. It's like, I can't even explain how
all
quick
of
it
these
happens.
things are already being set up. You're not having the process of this all at once because it's playing out. Yeah. You're in the dugout. And if you're paying attention to the game, you're going, okay, I'm going to come up. I'm in the hole, right? This guy got a single. Here's a walk. Here's a hit by pitch. You know, umpire squeezing him a little bit, right? They just starts adding these little notes in your head, right? And then like that's where, like for example, is like some of the things I like certain at bats. Like I was gonna kind of also we're gonna practically play out some of these things as well, right? And so like one of the things like from a double like this last weekend, right? Okay, so I get up there again. Somehow, again, I'm batting lead off. The couple guys didn't show up, all the stuff, right? I'm batting lead off to start the game, right? And so I get up there, and I'm notoriously, I'm actually playing on a double league right now where the guys that are on the team are guys I played with when I was younger, when I was like 15, up and scout ball, all the stuff. So some of them are used to me you know, and then one of the guys I played JUCO with, and he did bat right behind me, and I batted leadoff a lot for our JUCO team. So when I was batting leadoff, he literally was batting the 2-hole behind me, and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, bro, you know how I lead off, right? Like first pitch, I'm going, right? Like if you throw me a cookie first pitch, like I'm letting you eat it, right? Like I'm hitting a double, I'm hitting a homer, like I'm not letting you get a free pitch, like the first pitch. Like if you're gonna throw me a cookie first pitch, like I'm gonna let it eat. And so I'm ready to go first pitch, like you know when I lead off, and especially too, I'm a smaller guy. So when I'm, you know, because I'm a smaller guy, typically they'll try to like throw a fastball past me thinking that I don't have as much pop, right? So I would take advantage of those things. Now, again, early in the year, that's also something different. When you're facing certain teams again and again, obviously through college, that's going to change and they're going to approach. I started late in the season. They started throwing me first pitch changeup.
Right.
Right. And then they started, you know, again, me being aggressive early in the count. Right. But like you said, right, I go up there, you know, my first pitch, he throws me a ball 7 inches, 6 inches off the plate inside, right? And obviously, you know, not comfortable, but at the same time, I'm used to umpires like calling like this in the league, all these other things, right? But from that first pitch, I start collecting information, right? I'm not analyzing all this just late in the game. You know, it's playing out, right? So first pitch, he throws me inside. I kind of, you know, shoot my hips back, right? Umpire hoot, calls a strike, right? I'm like, bro, like that ball could hit me, right? And then you know, especially if I turned in, like I'm going to get wider. That ball is going to hit me. I'm going to get on base. So then next pitch, you know, I'm like, all right, let's see. We established the zone. Now, also before this, let me backtrack. Again, as a leadoff guy, the only reason I can be aggressive, and I don't know how you were when you batted leadoff, is because I was watching him warm up and I'm timing him up already. I've already taken a whole at bat against this guy. So I'm already have the timing down. I'm not getting into the box and getting my timing down. Like I'm already timed up before I ever step in the box. I don't need to like see it like again. And also too, unless some guy has some funky angle, we've seen enough pitching where a high school guy might try to get behind and scoot down the thing a little bit, you know, like move the batter's boxes. I mean, the on deck circle. I remember we used to,
they try to make it as close to home as possible.
Yeah. We try to scoot over. We'd be over there getting a foul ball and take an extra second to go and see a certain angle that this guy was creating or whatever, if we thought something was funky. But I was watching this guy warm up and he looked like he couldn't put anything to his glove side. He's a right-handed pitcher. You know, he's like 15, 16 years old, 17 years old, like this high school pitcher that's on the mound, and he's throwing everything arm side and he's dragging his arm a little bit. So it's going to have a little bit of tail, like all these typical things that you would normally see from these guys. So again, I get in there again, I'm timed up, guy throws me in, it's way inside, umpire calls it a strike, right? I'm like, all right. Next pitch, go to time up. He throws the same exact pitch in there again. Why would you not if the umpire is going to call it? Right. Okay. Got 2 strikes. Now on the second strike, I'm telling myself, okay, I got to hit this. Right. And how, you know, for me, I know how to create spacing on that pitch to be able to hit that fair. And again, not necessarily hit my best swing off, but I can still hit that pretty good. Now, I would rather, me personally, umpires call in off the plate than off the plate towards like first base side or outside to me, right? Because again, I have some more direction issues. I know that I have some more direction issues, but I can turn on a ball if I need to turn on a ball, right? So I'd much rather someone call inside on me than call outside on me, right? If someone's throwing some sweepy, especially you got to take in, right? Like adult ball, like high school level, right? They got these sweepy breaking balls.
Weird angles
that are breaking 3-4 feet with gravity, right? And this thing's so slow and it's just breaking across. And the umpire is also calling that far outside. It makes it really hard to hit those pitches for power. So, you know, and then you get died out where you're just hitting these little singles, you know, through the 4-hole over the second baseman's head, stuff like that, right? It becomes more difficult. So you get in those, and again, when I was younger, my approach would have been very different because I would have had a really hard time hitting because I couldn't create space like I can now, right? I know how to, you know, I know I can kick. I know that I know I can land slightly open and still be able to have good direction. I know how to get my bat head out if I needed to get my bat head out, but again, create less power to do it. And all these things of spacing options, right? My body, and again, I'm not thinking about that. My instinctually, because I, you know, can hit in that way is being like, I know I can go to that, right? So then that starts going in my head immediately as he throws that second pitch, like, okay, well, third pitch, right? He's probably going to either go in again or he's going to bury one right here and then, you know, do it. So next pitch, again, I'm sitting, he's not throwing hard enough where he can't beat me inside. So I'm not worried about like, now if he's throwing 95, now I'm in a problem. Different problem because now I can't look in and away at the same time. But this kid's not throwing hard enough. So I can look more middle over the plate and react in. and he throws me a breaking ball that he spikes. I check, watch it easy. And then the next pitch, he throws me that fastball again inside, and then I hit this high pop up that I just missed with my barrel. I got my barrel there, but I was underneath it, and I pop it up, right? And so that's the first at bat of having that information and being like, okay, so now, again, I collected a bunch of things. How the guy throws, saw a bunch of angles, saw what the umpire was calling, understand that, that going into later into the game, as it goes into different at-bats and like how that comes up, right? And so I think that's like, again, as we're talking about this, is some of the stuff, when you hear it all at once, it sounds like, oh my God, so much information, but you're collecting all these little moments throughout. And then also some of the stuff's just instinctual. Like we talk about it when someone brings it up, like, oh yeah, well, yeah, he's a 3/4 guy. So his ball's gonna move like, but we already know that because we've played so much, with that. Right. But it's like younger hitters, you haven't seen that shape enough. You haven't seen enough pitchers. You haven't seen enough guys where like that is not instinctual for you yet. You have to start thinking through some of these things and maybe even have a plan before you get up there. So you're not just like, all scattered, like with it as well. Right. So that's, that also that one part. Right. And then it's like, okay, now you have the next at bats. Right. So I wanted to take this as well before I go into my next at bat. Talk about too, I wanted you to touch on is like when you are in the dugout, right, and you're collecting all this information and you're seeing these other at bats, like, what are things that you were kind of like peeking at and looking out from the pitcher for how they're approaching other people?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, on deck, I know every coach ever is going to probably like tell me I'm the devil. Like on deck really didn't like do anything for me, be honest with you. Like I saw more benefit on deck of like having fun and like talking to the guys and just being like, we're like, yo, you see that? Blah, blah, blah. Like kind of like freeing up my mind a little bit. Like timing on deck didn't do anything. I needed to see it from the batter's box. And so like when it come to leading off, like, dude, when I tell you, like, it didn't matter what you were throwing. I was auto swing first pitch like 70% of the time because I just had to get out of the way. Yeah. And if it was a fastball, I knew I was usually going to be pretty decently on time. And if it wasn't and I looked stupid, I set you up and I knew what was coming next. So like,
and context for Cody, just again, obviously most of you guys probably haven't seen Cody really play, is Cody's got really good hands, right? So he doesn't, and then because he's also too not trying to like hit a homer his first at bat, right? He's like, he can be off time and still catch a barrel. Yeah. And that's why, again, approach wise, certain guys can't do that, right? Like they need to watch a couple pitches because they need timing is so important for them. Whereas like Cody can be off time on his front leg, throw his barrel out there and hit a line drive to right field, right?
Most of the time.
Yeah, of course, right? We always could do that. But my point is like I wanted to add that context in there is that certain hitters, like this is a perfect example, is certain hitters can get away and can have a different approach compared to other guys where on deck circle can be a completely different world for you compared to another guy, compared to the rest of the team, right? Every guy should have their own thing going on. Some guys need to really prep some movement because they're really diving into, certain things. Maybe a guy needs to do reverse leg kicks. Maybe he's got to swing some water bags. Maybe he's, whatever. Maybe he's got to just really get on timing with a certain guy because the guy keeps like herky jerking his leg or he's doing weird stuff at the mat, right? There's all these things that go into it, but I wanted to add that context for you. That's one reason that you're good at doing that. Yeah.
And then also too, I think so something that too, and this is pretty high level, but just the most recent high level playing that I was a part of was what was really important was where the catcher sat up and what pitches they were throwing. So like in college, and again too, I played at a D2. It wasn't the highest level, but also like kids weren't scrubs either. Like it was still pretty good. Like, there was typically tendencies like, hey, this guy likes his catcher set up inside on his slider because he's got a lot of movement. So he needs the focal point to be in or third to locate his slider low and away. And so like, for us, we had verbal cues and we had stuff like that all the time. So like in the dugout, what I wanted to see was like one, what pitches was he throwing for strikes first and foremost? Like percentage wise, we'd have percentage of fastballs for strikes. We'd have percentage of slider, curveball, percentage of changeup. And we broke it into 3 categories. Basically, if it's away from you as a righty, into you as a lefty, opposite, into you as a righty, or straight, right? And those were the pitches that we broke it into. It's just the angles, right? And then two, so I wanted to know what was he throwing for strike. So like if I see something that comes out of his hand that looks a little off, but it doesn't look like a slider, I'm taking if I know percentage wise his changeup he's not throwing for a strike at a high percentage, right? And if he does it for a strike, tip my cap. So what? You're throwing it 10% for strike this season, like
it happened to be this
great, right? Like it is what it is. I'm gonna win this battle 4 out of 5 times. Like so what? And then too, so I wanted to know, right, what percentage of strikes they were throwing, and then I also wanted to know, where people sat up for what pitch. And so, like certain guys, like high spin, high velo guys that thought they threw hard or did throw hard. Typically, let's just say this stereotypical, they liked fastballs up. So catchers, little clap up with the catcher's mitt, and like I was like to the point where I'd hear like audible things. And so I remember like there was 2 specific catchers in my conference. Anytime that they would set up fastball up, I would hear their glove clap like, hey, but I would never hear it on any other pitch. And so those guys, and I know too, you can look the other side. Maybe they could set you up that way. Never did, to us at least. But and also too, you got to have execution, right? And so, but for that instance, like I knew that if I heard glove, that they were trying to go fastball up. And so, and then I would pick up on those like from the dugout, and then again, we were asking each other questions. And then also too, another thing from the dugout, which I think is a little bit like undervalued, is I wanted to know where the hitters before me and after me stood mentally, emotionally. Like, how do you feel today? Are you locked in? Are you seeing the ball well? Are you not? Because then for me, I know what their approach is then going to be, which then can help me fine tune my approach. So, like for example, if my 9 holes freaking 0 for his last 10 with 9 Ks and he looks like he's going up there with his tail between his legs, like, that's going to affect what he then throws to me. Maybe he's going up there just grooving his fastball. Maybe he's in a groove, and then I think and I feel momentum of the game. He just got a groove for his fastball. My first pitch is probably going to be a fastball because he feels good about it right now. Or if the guy behind me is really struggling, he can't drive anything, keeps getting jammed today, keeps spinning, whatever, and he's literally coming up to me, hey, you get on, I'm looking to bunt. Okay, well, like that tells me too, like the pitcher and catcher probably know that. They probably can see that you've been struggling and like, you can't hit certain pitches. And so like I'm gathering all that information in the dugout and asking questions. Hey, what's his best pitch? Where do you feel like, where is he locating? Where is he not locating? When he misses outside, how much does he miss outside? Stuff like that. And little details.
I was gonna say also, and disclaimer here too, when your team is absolutely demolishing the pitcher, a lot of this stuff, these conversations, they happen less.
Yeah.
Right. But when the guy is absolutely carving your entire lineup and you guys got to find a way to make something happen, these conversations and these things that you pick up on become much more important. Obviously, again, as you go up in levels and you don't have these big discrepancies where everybody's just not kicking the hell out of one another. Yeah. Right. There's not this team up by 10 and this team up by 10, but you're doing these games where it's like, 3-2 and it's or 4-6 or all of a sudden. And that's where, again, even for me, like later on, even in this game, as those things start to progress, right, as we pick those things up, is, okay, he's kind of pitching everybody generally the same. He's throwing inside, all those other things, right? And then so I come up for my second at bat. I'm leading off again. Bottom of the lineup got out. I'm leading off again for this inning. And also, too, for me, for example, I tend to hit better when there's people on base because I dial it back a little bit and I become a team guy. When there's nobody on base, I get a little big. Yeah, I get a little free, and sometimes I overswing, right? So I can have those other things, right? So the next at bat, I was actually kind of juiced to face this kid again because he's throwing like 81, he's like 81, 82. Like, I'm like, like I'm going to juice this kid, right? So next at bat, I'm hunting fastball in, right? So he throws me the first pitch. I overswing, hit a foul ball. Jerked off of it and hit a ball that way. So then I'm like, okay. So then the next, I'm like, okay, he's gonna, keep trying to throw me some of the pitches again, right? So we went like curveball in the dirt. Probably saw how big I was swinging. Like curveball in the dirt. I watched it. Threw another ball like off the plate, right? Again, okay. So now we're 2-1. I'm back. I'm going big swing again. He throws me something fat, swung straight through it, like just big G hack. I think I might have foul tipped it or something, but like just big G hack, and like the dugout's like healthy, like all the things. And I'm like, and then I was like, all right. So I need to dial back in. And then he threw me a fastball again, in off the plate, the same thing. And I popped up to the catcher. I popped up to the catcher with that one, right? And I hit it up. So I'm keeping these things in mind. I'm keeping these things in mind because this is where this thing changes, right? Because you have 2 at-bats, right? You popped up twice. Okay, what are those adjustments now? Because everybody's going to have at-bats where you pop up or all these other things. And also, too, let's be square on the other side of this, right? Like, your boy swings like once a month, right?
It's adult ball.
And adult ball, and we're doing other things, right? Like, most of these guys, on the same side of this, right? It's just more about knowing what your body can do and then knowing what you can hit when you how you're moving now. No one's in peak shape out there, right?
Yeah.
Like we're all not able to run things out most of the time. So we're also on the other side of that. But then, for example, we're still trying to win. It's still competitive, right? And so what I'm saying with this is then all of a sudden I come up my third at bat, right? Well, my third at bat, we're in a different situation. We were already up 4-0. My other bats, right? Or my first bat, no, but my second bat, we're up 4 runs, right? But then we haven't scored. Then I come up my third at bat and it's 4-2, right? I'm leading off the inning again. Bottom of the lineup got out, right? Now it's 4-2, and my job is to get on base, right? We gotta get something going. They're starting to catch back up and then also too, our better pitchers coming out of the game. They had bases loaded last inning. They scored 2 runs. We were throwing the ball around a little bit, made a couple errors. We're in a different situation now, right? So I know that this guy is throwing this ball into me multiple times today. And obviously I don't even know if he can really locate it out in a way. He's more arm side for everything. So I'm like, okay, so first pitch, he throws me inside. Well, I turn my shoulder, boom, he hits me. Right. And it's like, but again, he could have hit me all game long. I in those moments when there's nobody on base, we're up by 4 runs, that I don't need to do that, right? But late in the game, now I have that in my back pocket. Maybe I got 2 strikes. Maybe I'm put into a situation where we're down by a run or whatever, right? And I can pull that out. And so sometimes that's also the chess move as well, is a lot of pro hitters will talk about that too. I remember when I used to hit with Canseco, and he used to talk about how when he would hit multi homers in a game, right? And where that would come from. And how he would set up pitchers. And sometimes, he would even say in a situation where the bat, wasn't as big, right? He might even set the pitcher up later on, hit a ground ball on a pitch, not or he'll hit a foul ball on something or look really fooled on something or, whatever. And then, or he would keep that in his back pocket of knowing that was going to be something that he went to. And knowing that late in the game, the guy would be like, oh, he looked really foolish on this pitch earlier. And so, I'm going to go back to it again. And so now he has that logged in his head. Or for example, when he's talking about these multi-home run games, he's like, okay, well, first at bat, he threw a fastball. I took him dead center 450. Okay. The next at bat, I'm not getting first pitch fastball. I'm going to get a breaking ball. Now I'm eliminated immediately his fastball off my first. I'm sitting breaking balls immediately, after that, because I know he's not going to come right back with the same pitch I just took him out on. So he's already thinking that way, right? So then I get, again, hit by pitch, get on base, watch him throw 1 pitch, and then I steal second base, right? And it's just like, okay, now, and then the next guy, and then guy comes up, and then, guy hits a single, I end up scoring, right? And it's like, okay, now we end up getting a run there in that situation, right? And these things are all setting up and learning throughout the game as these situations change. And then we put a bunch of runs up. Now we're pretty far ahead again, right? Yeah. And then that's like we talked about earlier, there's some global dynamics, right? When you're really far ahead, well, what is the pitching trying to do? Are they trying to mess around and are they trying to cut corners now? Are they doing other things? No, and that's why sometimes games end up getting blown out, because you have 2 different things happen. One, the hitters know you're coming right after them, right? When you're way ahead or way behind, pitchers are coming right after guys, right? They're not trying to just let guys get on base. They're gonna let them get themselves out. That changes the dynamics of also when I'm hunting and when I'm not hunting as well, right? And then like you said, right, you put a dog ball or you put in lower levels of baseball, they don't have a lot of depth of pitching, right? Which then also changes things too as well, of how that, interactions and those things.
Yeah. And then too, with all this too, I think another thing that's really important is I was watching Ken Griffey was on a podcast recently talking about somebody asked him, was like, you ever face Greg Maddux? And he was just like, yeah, I faced him. He said, faced him in the All-Star game, and he threw me this pitch, and he's like, I hit that ball 430 feet, and he goes, and I don't know the context. I don't know if he's ever faced him after that, but he was like, he never threw me that pitch again the rest of his career. He's and he was like, the reason I tell that story is great hitters never forget and great pitchers never forget. And those guys, as crazy as it sounds, like those guys face each other every year, you know, at least the ones that stick around, you know, there's obviously new blood in there every once in a while, but like, you know, Garrett Cole's facing the same guys every year, you know what I mean? And like, and so they get used to each other, and like same thing, like in conference. Yeah. Right. It's like, you know, Kershaw's been in the league for how many years? Like faced everybody quite a few times, right? Like, you know, Paul Goldschmidt's faced Kershaw like 50 at bats. It's like, he has a pretty good idea how Kershaw's approached him. Right. And same thing like in college or in high school. I mean, you face the same guys every year. If you're a senior and this senior is pitching on the mound, I mean, shoot, you might have faced him since you were 8. Like you guys could have been playing little league all the way up to, you know, whatever in high school.
In tournaments or,
and so you have this context, and you know, I like that comment from his like, great hitters never forget. Like, I know what he's been able to get me out with in the past, so I know that given a big situation, like that's probably what he's going to challenge me with. And, you know, and then same thing as the pitcher. Like, the pitcher doesn't forget either. The pitcher knows, hey, you know, this guy's crushed my fastball or crushed my curveball, blah, blah, blah. So like, you know, I need to lean more this way and, you know, be heavier on my changeup this time or whatever. Right. And, you know, it's a never ending chess match, always back and forth. And like going into, you know, kind of like your last at bat is like the same thing as like, you know, never forgetting. And, you know, disclaimer, I already know what happened the last at bat. So, you know, a little foreshadowing, but, you know, like going into that last at bat, it's like, you know, great hitters never forget. They always know. And then too, let's just say, hey, in the playoffs, right? Let's say in the playoffs of this adult league, you face that kid again, like you're going to know exactly what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are. He's not going to forget what you did or didn't do against him. Like, it's all going to be there.
It's a strategy, like you said, right? The other thing is a strategy is this as well. Like, okay, I'm trying to hit that pitch. I'm trying to do those other things. But sometimes, like, again, let's just all be honest. I don't care if the kid's throwing 72, right? I don't care if, 6, 7 inches inside is really difficult. Yeah. It's not an easy pitch to hit, right? It's same thing off the plate, the opposite way. And like I said, I'd prefer it in compared to out, right? 6, 7 off the plate is, whoo.
Prefer it down the middle, really.
Yeah, good God. Yeah, 100%, right? And also on the barrel if I could. But the other thing is as well, like this is also a strategy for you guys. I mean, Barry Bonds, a lot of guys use the strategy when umpires or guys are trying to attack you in all the time, especially somebody has lanky arms and they don't want to get him extended. I have shorter arms, so it's not so much for me, but there's certain hitters that are really trying to, Aaron Judge, certain guys that they don't want their arms to get extended, right? So, they typically have spacing issues, right? Or it's really hard for them. They're more likely to have some spacing problems. So, again, a lot of hitters like that, like Bonds, like he used to stand on top of the plate. Like dude's on top of the plate. Like again, the same thing, right? The umpire doesn't have an opportunity to call it if it hits me. Right. So now you take these other options away, right? So it's like they already hit me early. They already hit me in the box. And now I have that strategy where it's like, I don't need, and then like we talked about, like some people would go, oh, he's throwing you in. Why don't you just back off the plate, right? That's like the lower level thought with it, right? But it's like, it could work. But more often than not, you go to upper levels, like the catcher realizes you backed off the plate a little bit, and then they start throwing you away. They start throwing you sliders. They start throwing breaking balls. Even a fastball that's just on the outside part of the plate, now all of a sudden it feels like it's off the plate.
Especially if you have direction issues too.
100%, right? If I'm pulling my shoulder a little bit, if I'm doing some other things, like, man, it's going to be a really tough thing for me. So me backing off the plate is not, I'd rather, again, land slightly open, or I know I can stay closed, kick, get my barrel out. There's a lot of things I can do and get a hit that way. I'd rather do that. So then, again, with it though, is now you have that in your back pocket and it's in the back of their head, right? It's in the back of their head that like, okay, if he throws in, and then the game before, if any of those guys were watching or if they got a scouting report or whatever, they see that like I've always taken a lot of hit by pitches. Right. Because on the same side of that, especially if I started getting 2 strikes, like I started being a wizard, especially when they came out with Evos. I'm like, oh, bro, my elbow, I don't care. Like back in the day, you'd be trying to hide it because, you're out for a week, you get hit back in the elbow like that. But nowadays with Evos and stuff too, it's like hitters, you got to be smart with that too. Like it feels like someone flicked you in the elbow. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's a useful tool that you have on your arm, right? So I instinctively like, at times, like I know how to, and then also too, if you're standing sideways in the box, you guys got to think about this too. If you're a younger hitter and you haven't thought about this, if you're standing sideways in the box, as I turn my upper body, now I have my back, right? Big back, right? Big back to the pitcher. you take up a lot of that space on the inside part of the plate, right? You've now covered all that. So even if the umpire is calling some of those things, right? Even, you know what, let's say he tries to say you didn't get out of the way or something like that, and he pulls you back in. You know what he's not going to do? He's not going to call it a strike, right? Because again, now if you're standing on top of home plate and you're throwing your elbow out there, which I've done that plenty of times, right? That you might get a chance every once in a while. An umpire might try to be a hero, but a lot of umpires won't even call that. They'll call it a ball, but they're not going to call it a hit by pitch strike, right? Like that's like he's got to have, especially for a college coach, he knows he's going to get his ear ringing for, yelling. All the fans are going to be down his neck, right? So then, again, for example, I get ready for my next at bat, right? Where they switch pitchers, the guy's warming up. Here I am. Either I can't remember if I'm coming up to lead off again or if I was just, nobody was on base. So I'm coming up. I'm pretty sure I was leading off again, right? So now this is a situation where I'm leading off again, right? And I'm like, man, I was like, I want to get somebody on base. Also, this is another thing I changed. My third at bat, I forgot to mention this. My third at bat, I switched bats, right? Because the bat I was using is very top heavy. And I was just like, okay, well, if he's throwing me in and I want to be able to get my barrel there and not pop it up, I was like, maybe I need to use this other bat. So then before I went up for my fourth at bat, somebody was talking about my Birdman, right? And he's like, bro, like, your Birdman's sick, like all these other things, like, oh, it feels so good. I'm like, yeah, it's a little barrel heavy. I was like, I haven't used it in a game yet. And like when he's throwing me that far inside, right? And then you got to also think about this too. Let's just be real, right? You got your brand new Woody, that you have out there. Someone's calling that far, throwing that far inside. I'm not trying to break the thing. You know what I'm saying? I love that bat. So in any case, that's also in the back of your head too, right? And so then and also no one likes breaking their bat, period. Nobody likes getting jammed, period. It doesn't matter if your bat's not breaking at all. No one wants to get jammed. The other thing is, so I see the guy warming up. Well, this is another thing, right? A global thing across the board, right? When they're bringing in a new pitcher, mid-inning, the guy's in trouble. They brought in a new pitcher, a different inning, all the stuff. Usually 95% of the time, 98% of the time, unless you're at a really crazy level and they got a scouting report on you and whatever, they're probably going to throw you a fastball. Yeah. So you should be ready for that fastball. A lot of coaches will do the opposite. Hey, C1 and do all those other things. Yeah. This is the problem that I've had with C1, right? This is the problem that I have with C1. A lot of times coaches are making players C1 when they're a bad hitter. And what I mean by this, right, is you'd go, well, yeah, they're a bad hitter. That's why I want to help them get their timing down or do whatever. But the problem is that's probably the best pitch they're going to see. So if you make them take that pitch and then now he's down 0-1, if you go look statistically across the board between all hitters, especially bad hitters, as they get later in the count and they're less adjustable and they have less spacing and they have less correction and all those other things, they're more likely to fail. So another part with that too is I actually used to do the difference. When the opposite is when I coach on the field, I'd be telling our hitters like, hey, we're going to be aggressive pitch one, right? Like in these situations, they want to have a mound meeting. He's going to throw a fastball. He's going to try to come at you right now because he's been throwing everything around. Like, hey, it's the bottom of the lineup. Go after the guy. It's like, dude, those are the pitches I want you to be aggressive on, right? Yeah. And it's like, because I'm trying to hit my way out of here. I'm not trying to walk my way out of here, right? Like we're not, and there's always a call for everything, right? There's understanding the situation, right? Of knowing what the matchups look like. But most of the time, I see that is a mistake that coaches will make with hitters is they're making them giving them the take sign on situations where, the deeper I get in the count, the more advantaged this pitcher is against me, right? I take first pitch fastball. Of course, first off, think back when you were a hitter. Coach tells you take first pitch fastball. He throws it right down the middle. And you're just like, that's the best pitch I'm going to see this whole at bat, and I had to take it.
Even if you don't hit that pitch, the fact that you took that pitch immediately made just such a negative mindset for that whole at bat.
The pitcher gets a whole bunch of momentum. Like I threw one right down the middle and got away with one, right? And then the next pitch, the hitter's antsy because he feels like he's behind. He's anxious, right? And then the pitcher throws a changeup or a cutter or a two-seam with some arm side or whatever, right? And then all of a sudden now, again, even if it's a ball, it doesn't matter. Now he's back to 1-1. And again, like that's where the things get different is like, again, if he's going to walk you or hit you or any of those other things, like that takes a lot of pitches for it not to happen. So anyways, I typically, generally, I told the guys, I grabbed my Birdman, the guy was talking about my Birdman, and he's like, the guys, they're not throwing that hard, man. Like, he's like, it might help you slow down and all the things, right? And I'm like, you know what? He's right. So, I was like, I picked up the bat. I'm like, I do love this bat. So then I'm like, I'm taking swings in the on-deck circle, right? Time the guy up already, like I already said. Then, I get in the box. Remember, this guy's already hit me inside. And again, this is his first pitch of the inning. He's coming in, right? Well, he throws me something fat over the middle part of the plate. And then I took your boy, like 400, like straight left field, right? Like, again, like no doubter, like bomb to left field, right? And again, I didn't even know if I could still do that. I hadn't done that in a really long time. Also, I didn't hit many no doubters in my and especially not with a wood bat. I think one other time I hit a no doubter with a wood bat. So again, I hit this bomb with it, right? But again, it's not just that one at bat in itself, right? And again, yes, of course, okay, new pitcher, and he was just trying to get ahead and all those other things. But also on the other side of that, I've seen all those other things that have been happening, and also too, because of those earlier at bats. Again, when a guy's throwing you really inside, it's actually the opposite. You think that, oh, well, if you yank and spin, you're going to drag your barrel. So you don't want to do that. You actually need to stay closed. You need to stop sooner so you can get the barrel out. It's the opposite of what everybody tries to do. Oh, I'm getting beat, I'm going to swing faster. No, it already made me lock in and made me decel better because, again, I didn't want to drag my barrel, right? So I already had it, especially with a heavier bat, right? So going into that fourth at bat, I'm taking all of that information and all of those things that I felt within my swing, all the timing, all the things that have gone into that. And then also too, we're up by a bunch, right? All of these things that we talked about globally. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to hunt. I'm going to be aggressive here on this first pitch fastball. So yeah, the first pitch the guy throws, it gets hit a long ways, but at the same time, and then it was funny because before I went up there, the guy behind me was like, yo, you hit a jack right now. I'll go back to back with you. So I hit hit plate and I'm like, bro, time for you to show up, player. Yeah. Time for you to do your thing, And so, he ended up not, so I had to give him a hard time about it. But on the same with that is like, again, these are all these approaches that set up. And then also two hitters, I think too often see these as individual events. And you got to understand that the pitcher, even the pitching coach, let's say it's a different pitcher. The pitching coach is having sequences that are going in his head. He's setting you up. Most of the time, he's not even calling his own game. The pitching coach is calling the game, right? So the pitching coach, that's why we have pitch tendency charts. That's why we have these other things, because everybody falls into patterns. Or when they get ahead, they like to do this. Or when they do this, they like to do that, right? Or you know what? They're like, damn, like that guy hit by pitch last time and then he stole it back. Like he's thinking about all these little extra things. That's why even at the point of me bringing it up is, this other context is like, you take an extra bag, it's basically a double, right? So they're like, damn, I hit by pitch and he got all the way to second base. Next pitch hit a guy hit a single and then he scores in a big part of the game. Like all these other things, and it sets up your next at bat, and it's all of these at bats building off one another. Even if you get out your first at bat, even if you pop up or whatever, or you do all those other things, it's still, you're learning, you're setting up, and it's teaching you approach wise that you're making these little adjustments, and you're learning from every single event. But it is a story throughout the whole game of like what sets up the next one, And also too, right at that point, I was 0 for 2 with 2 pop-ups, or you could have a K, you could be 0 for 3, or like what's his name on the Rangers a couple years ago? He's 0 for 4 Ks and hits a walk-off jack, right? It's like you're learning something from every at bat, and also a lot of that is just matchups and angles and situational stuff and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, this whole topic ignites a few things, but for sure one of them that like I want to make a point is your approach has to get really good when the guy on the other side of you is just better than you. For sure. Like you have to take calculated risk when that guy's not very good. And this is where a lot of people, this can get hairy. Yeah. You don't want to go up there thinking that you're not that good, right? Like you want to go up there with confidence, but also you got to be real, right? It's like, hey, this guy, like I was telling you about the guy, like my last at bat of college, but like guy was still like 97, got throwing gas, and he had like an 89 mile an hour slider. I'm like,
I'll just make a side note here. Like, as you mentioned, I think a way of doing that and framing that up is he's more leveraged than I am, right? It's not that he's necessarily better than I am. Even the guy's throwing 97, he has more leverage than I have, right? In this situation.
In this moment,
right?
You're right.
Yeah, in this moment, right? So instead of going up there like, okay, well, how can I create more leverage? And that's where, like, as you're about to go into, because we talked about the story before we started, is, okay, we're playing a chess match. How can I gain some advantages? You know what? This guy is bigger than me, or like, even if you think of it like a fight, right? It's a matchup. Yeah. He can do this and I can do, how can I gain a little bit on this guy, right? Where I can maybe, get a hit out of this, or I can set him up to get hit by pitch, or I can, what can I do to leverage myself to not be at such a disadvantage? Yeah. Right. And that's where it becomes, as you said, because you don't want to go up there going like, this guy's just, it's like, no, he's not like, again, he's not impossible to hit.
No.
Like somebody could go up here, even if he's
a tougher matchup, maybe.
There's a worse hitter than me that could get a hit off this guy.
For sure.
So I need to lock into that and go, okay, how can I get a hit off this guy? And then
and kind of like you were saying with like fighting, right? It's like there's different matchups, right? There's guys that are more boxers, there's guys that are more wrestlers, like, and I know it expands. It's more your knowledge. Like I think about it more basketball terms, like, hey, this guard's a little bit more physical, right? He's 6'3", 215. I'm 5'10", 165. Yeah, right. It's like he's gonna try to post me up. I'm gonna have to front him, right? And there's different ways. Like I'm not just gonna not guard him, right? I just have to guard him differently than I guard other people, etc. Right? And so same thing when it goes up to like some of these guys. Like you run into matchups where your approach has to get more dialed in, more specific, or just better, if you will. When the matchup's tougher, right? When the competition is also at a really high level and you have to elevate yourself to be able to compete against it. So that's one of the things too that's like a pet peeve of mine is everybody's like, you got to have this approach. It's like, well, if I were to go play high school ball right now, my approach would be pretty simple. I'm pretty positive, just being older, knowing the game, strength, athleticism. I don't really need an approach. When I was in high school, my approach was a little bit more in depth because I just wasn't that good compared to I am now.
And it matters how much what you're challenging yourself with, right? Because one of the things I actually was challenging myself to also get better at it was like, well, what if I told myself let's say even a doll ball, right? What if I told myself I want to go 4 for 4 every game, right? What's like, okay, well now I'm gonna have to tune it in. Could I hit? Could I hit 380, 400 against high school kids not really having an approach? Yes. But if I was trying to hit 750 or 800, it's like, okay, well now I'm going to have to tune it in a little bit because I'm like, it is hitting still hard, right? Especially at that, to hit to that extent of it's like, that's what I started challenging myself with is like the craft of hitting and almost like I started thinking about it that way. Like, okay, well, what if I did, if I wanted to be how could I get better here too, and keep doing that and to help hitters and others.
For sure. Yeah. And so like, that's one of like my pet peeves is everybody's like, oh, you got to have this approach. And it's like, if you have a really good swing in comparison to the guy that's on the bump right now, like your approach doesn't really need to be that complicated. Right. It's like you can cover a lot of different, that hunt fastball down the middle, right? It's like, well, I mean, like you're pretty strong, athletic, and have a pretty good swing. Like, I get it, right?
Yeah, and it helps you too. And some people think that looking fastball down the middle is necessarily like a bad approach, but the other thing is it keeps you tight, right? When I'm looking middle out, I'm more likely to chase out. If I'm looking middle in, I'm more likely to chase in. If I'm looking down, I'm more likely to chase down. Up, same thing, right? Like think of how many softball girls are going, oh, well, she's gonna throw me a rise ball at the top of the zone, so I'm looking up, and then they chase. So it's like that's why some of those girls is like we always used to talk about that is like shifting your eyes down. Like no, I'm hunting, I'm hunting middle of my thigh. Why? Because if she throws one down there and it does rise, well, it's a strike. But if she throws one at middle of my waist or above my waist, it's going to run out of the zone, right? So that's where, like, again, I was just talking about, it's like, it sounds simple, but also it's actually a pretty good approach in a lot of ways. It makes you, especially early in the count, and gets you away from chasing things that are like borderline pitches or off the plate, and you're chasing early, which is not good.
Yeah. So like that one. And then another one that drives me crazy is just my experience talking to high school hitters is how many coaches will say, stick to your approach.
Yeah.
You ask any of your high school kids that you train what their approach is. What approach? What are they sticking to? You haven't taught them, and they don't know what an approach is, right? And if you ask them, they'll mumble through some crap or something.
Yeah,
some
regurgitate
of them,
something.
Right? And most of them, in my experience, won't. They'll be like, well, I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to go get a good pitch to hit. Like, all right, bro.
Trying to get something I can hit hard.
Yeah, it's like, okay. So it's like, they say, stick to your approach up there. Stick to your, it's like, okay. And then two, also, it's pretty, like, it can get complex, especially too. I'm basing it off of like what we had in college. If you're in high school, just basic pitch tendency charts, like what's he throwing for a strike?
Yeah, when he gets
what's
ahead,
he not?
what is he
What
doing?
counts does he throw what?
Yeah.
What counts does he not throw what? Like every time he gets 1-1, he comes with the slider. Every time he gets ahead, he goes immediately to this. He likes to double up all the time. He doesn't like to double up. Like just super simple stuff. Like it doesn't need to be super complex like we've been talking about some of the stuff.
And
like something simple.
And the pitch tendencies, I did the pitch tendency chart. I was like the chief. I had a hat that was like, the guy in college my last year when I was like player coaching. And sometimes it's the opposite, right? Like you're charting not because you need to know every tendency, but because there's a pattern. And you go, hey, 2-0, he's throwing 20 2-0 pitches today, which was that'd be tough, right? But if let's say he's throwing 20 2-0 pitches today and he's throwing nothing but a fastball. So now when you get up there and it's 2-0, you're going, bro. Okay,
Cookie.
yeah, I don't need to know every tendency that he does, but sometimes there's just a glaring thing. It's just like, yo, he throws first pitch fastball. Every guy, like it's just like, okay, I'm gonna jump on it early, or he likes to throw first pitch changeup, right, or things like that, right, or like there's certain guys that work with that, and that's where the pitch tendencies things as well is, right. It's like sometimes there's just a glaring thing that's a pattern that they do, and then that one thing, if you know, that can be an advantage or give you leverage in that at bat.
Yeah, you know? and then to your point again, a little bit more complex is like sometimes you would know that pattern that they would get into, like that get into a 2-1 count or a 3-1 count. We'd have patterns where like, hey, this guy when he gets to 3-1 counts, it's like always this pitch, right? And so like for me, I would go up there and I'd be like, my job's to get to 3-1 because I know what's coming, right? And so it's like he could throw a first pitch slider for me for all I know and get a strike and then go slider, try to get me to chase. He's 2-1. Next thing you know, he throws a fastball up. Now he's 3-1. I just fought to the count that I know what's coming now. So now I'm in the leverage position. Or hey, every time he goes 2-2, he throws his curveball, right? And he hangs his curveball 80% of the time, right? And so like in my mind, I'm not even like, again, I'm going up there trying to hit, but I know that push comes to shove. If I get to 2-2 count, I'm in a winning position.
And there's another thing about approaches here too as well. Sometimes you have to have a certain approach because it keeps you locked in. And what I mean by this, right, is like some hitters can't look middle in.
No.
Ever. It doesn't matter if the guy's throwing there.
Me.
Sometime to hit middle in, they have to look out. That was for me, right? A lot of times, especially when I was younger. Now I can look in a little bit because I know how to pull it, right? But when I was young, I had to look out to react in, because if I looked in, I would spin. So and I would drag my barrel, and I didn't know how to fix that, right? So at the time, that's also another thing. Sometimes you have to think, I'm going to hit a single or a line drive, and it's an external, like a more approach, right? And I'm going to hit a line drive this way, but then I'm going to react in and I'll hit a homer, right? And it's like, I'm approaching to hit a line drive over the second baseman's head, but that's to make sure I don't yank off a ball because the guy's throwing cutters or he's throwing something that's, got a little bit of run on it, right? So that's also another thing, or for example, for me, sometimes I couldn't sit like breaking ball, change up, some of these other things, like, and still hit the fastball. But one thing that would help me is like I could sit like cutter or slider, right? And especially if the guy had a tight slider, not sweeping, but like more tight break, it gave me that in between. And for me, it helped me not yank, right? Because if I was anticipating a ball to break away from me a little bit, I would stay on it, right? Because again, I couldn't yank off of it. Again, I could do that on a fastball that's middle inside. But again, and that's where sometimes also an approach is not always what he's throwing. Even if you know he's throwing you inside, you might have to think line drive over the right, second baseman's head just to keep you from spinning off a ball or something like that, right? So that's another thing about approaches is sometimes, again, it's going to be individualized to you. You might have to look up and inside. You might have to look, again, I've had pro guys that they look up and inside every pitch because, again, it keeps them honest. It makes them not drop and dip with their back shoulder. It makes them not collapse on their backside. And so for somebody like me, that's a crazy approach. But I'm more likely to look down and away, right? Because that keeps me posture over home plate, not yanking off the ball, helps me decel and stay on pitches. I'm more likely to look that way. Now, does that mean I'm actually just trying to hunt just pitches down and away? No, I'm just protecting down and away, or I'm looking and my eyes are down and away so that I can hit other pitches. And I just want to bring that point up too, is sometimes it's actually not, I might know what he's throwing, but my approach is going to be completely different than what he's throwing. Because that's how I'm going to hit that pitch is by looking for another pitch or preparing for a different pitch.
Another way to say that too is like I had a hitter that he tends to get really like dive over home with his chest, almost like he's trying to hit something low all the time. And like an approach ish, I guess if you want to call it, or setup that's really helped him was always hunting high fastball, because you can adjust down quicker than you can adjust up. And so like we kind of talk going into weekends, like, hey, you're setting up like you're always getting a high fastball, but you're really good at hitting the low pitch. So like you're actually the pitch you want is down, right? I'm setting my posture, my body to a high fastball.
Yeah.
I'm setting my eyes and my commitment to something below my belt.
Yeah.
And so, how that can get a little bit more layered.
Could I hit a ball at the top of the zone here? Sure. Yeah, but I'm hunting a ball low.
Yeah, but I don't want to.
Exactly.
If I have, if I don't have to.
And then that's what I'm trying to say. It's all layers. And this is the other thing of unpacking this. You don't need. This is where, as like hitting coaches, and also too as a hitter, this is different. Like we're talking about it. I'm talking about as a hitting coach. I'm hitting. Well, I'm going to hit a little different, and I'm going to have a little bit different approaches comparatively to other guys because I know how my body. I'm like hyper aware how my body's moving, right? So I know that my body might not be moving well, or I'm yanking off, or I don't have space right now. So, and sometimes that works in my favor, and sometimes it's like actually worse, right? Because I know I'm not moving well, and some of the hitters just don't even know they're not moving well, and they're just hitting with what they got, right? So that's also another piece as well, is being like, if you can have a coach that can help you guide, especially when you're a younger hitter, right? Guide you through some of that of what would be best for you. And that's the same thing. We don't just do movement, like, things that are individualized, but also your approach is going to be individualized based on like what you just said. Maybe you're diving, maybe because of how you move and how you like to create force, you're yanking off this ball, or you're a lefty and righty, and like you're typically seeing these shapes all the time. You're going to have different problems than other guys. All of these things kind of go in, and that's where, as like hitting coaches, we kind of have that, Rolodex, or, we have that database that we can access and go, okay, I've had hitters like you before. This actually might be really good for you. Try this out. Or, when you get to 2 strikes, you might actually have to look, try to do this for you. Right. Maybe widening out and choking up is not good for you because of how you hit. And also, or you're already so good at that. Like, again, for example, like, if a guy that has really good hands and can hit like you and can get on his front side and still do that, it's like, do I need to choke up and do I need to get super wide to be able to compete here? And it's like, well, no, maybe I'm going to make some other adjustments or whatever. Right. But it's like, there's other guys that would work a lot better for. And there's other guys, especially as we talk about with certain guys' hips and stuff, it's like, you're going to make them actually pull off balls a lot more if you make them set up like that. And you just think it'd be like, oh, it's the same for everybody. It's like, no, but everybody moves different. And like when that guy gets wide, his hips tilt and all these things start happening. And now his movement is ugly and he's getting pushy with his hands. He's getting really defensive in his approaches, and it's, it gets bad. Right. But, I think that those are all these different layers of approaches. And I think one of the things that we wanted to get on here and like do and have more is like talking through some of these like at bats that we've had. And I'm sure we'll think of ones throughout our career, and also I'll have different ones that, also we're playing weekends and stuff like that, of thinking about that and sharing those approaches, because I know a lot of times some of these hitters, some of these players don't have the opportunity just to be around hitters that kind of think like that. And then also sharing approaches that, major league at bats and other things that, we know that certain people have had. I think that would be, huge as well. And I think that'd be a big piece. But I wanted to finish up, and I think we wrap this way, is with you sharing that story with the last guy you faced, right? The guy from like 97.
Yeah. I mean, it was like my final at bat of my career. And so it's, funny story to me. I look back at it, I'm like, it's classic. It's like, so I go up and I'm like on deck, and they bring in the closer, and it's kind of like one of those things where you just got that feeling. I think we're down by like 3 in the last inning. They bring in their closer. And I look up in the radar. This first pitch says 97. I'm like, well, here we go. And I was like, great. I was like, this is where we're at, right? And so I'm like, first pitch is like 97. I'm like,
just hiding this guy.
I know. I look over at one of my boys. I think it was Aiden at the time, and I look over at him. I'm like, you think that's broken? I was like, is that right? Sheesh. And the next pitch, like 96. I'm like, nope, that thing's cooking. That boy correct. Yeah. So I'm like, all right. So, in my head, I'm like, all right, last at bat, it's like I have the emotional side of like, this could very well be my last at bat. So I was like, obviously I want to go big fly my last at bat. So I'm like, for sure. I was like, we're playing at Mesa, which is in Colorado, Grand Junction, elevation, left field's like 301. I'm like, this guy's throwing 97. If I just touch it fair, it's got a shot, bro. Go, right? So I'm like, I'm like that. But I also know like he's throwing 97. So I'm like, okay, he's probably going to try to throw gas by me, right? And so I'm like, guys who throw hard, they want to throw hard. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to go up there. And it's like, I know that I don't want to hit the 97. So I was like, I got to be ready. immediately first pitch to go up there and make it look like I'm ready to hit his 97 and hope that he's like, oh wow, this guy's on my 97. Like I'm gonna go with the slider, right? And I didn't see a slider in his warm-ups. And if he did throw it, he sandbagged it. Like it wasn't good. And so he throws that first pitch fastball, right? And I think I foul it just straight back, maybe up and back, right? Bro, that's how it felt. I don't think I saw it. I was like, it was cheddar, bro. It was cheddar.
Is he gonna throw it?
Bro, and he's one of those like max effort guys. So it was like, it already looked hard, and then it was, and I was like, oh crap. And it wasn't good anyway. So, but I felt like I was like, I had that like false confidence, like, yeah, like I'm on it. Like, please don't throw that again. I'm pretty sure the next pitch he threw hit at about 48 feet. Like it was a slider, hit the grass, and I swung. And I was like, I swung. Because I was like, because in my head, I'm like, he threw the fastball. He's throwing the slider. I'm going to get the slider. I was like, so I'm swinging, I'm auto swing, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm auto swing, I'm going up there. And this is one of those situations where like, let's just say where I was at in my career, this guy had a lot of leverage over me just athletically. Yes. I'm pretty sure he got drafted in like the 10th round that year. Again, like the only thing I could have got drafted to is like the military if I wanted to. Like, like it wasn't, he had leverage, right? And it's like, so he throws that and it bounces. I'm like, oh boy. So I'm like, okay, well, I just swung at a ball that hit at about 48 feet. So he's throwing it again. So I'm auto take at this point. I'm 0-2 and I'm like, he's throwing the slider. I'm auto take. When I tell you this thing was as marginal gets, umpire didn't call it a strike. I look back at the catcher and the catcher kind of big eyes look at me. And I was like, I always talked. I talked to the catchers and stuff. And I was just like, boy, that was pretty close. And he was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm taking that. And I was just like, well, honestly, I was auto take, bro. I was like, I wasn't swinging no matter what. And then he throws another fastball, and then it's a ball, and I'm pretty sure it's like 2-2 count. Then he throws another slider, and it bounces another batter's box, and I swing. It was like not even close. But it was just funny because I'm going up there and I'm trying to like leverage his ego. I'm like, I want the slider because like I can at least see it at 88, 89, it's not 97.
Yeah.
And I'm going up there trying to set him up and he set me up. And then, I'm going up there. It's my last at bat, anxious and, stuff like that. And then it was funny. And then, I get back in the dugout and everybody's kind of like sad looking at me. Cause it's like, I was like one of 2 or 3 seniors, I think, like, that had a chance to play that game. Everybody else was a little bit younger. And they were like, how do you feel that could be your last at bat? And I was like, oh, that's for sure my last at bat. They ain't touching him either. I was like, those 2 guys are screwed. Like, but it's just like thinking ahead of time and like that at bat too. It's like, again, didn't see him all game. He's a closer, limited information. He threw hard in warm up. So I'm like, I'm banking that he's going to want to do it. I know that my tendency is to get back Yankee, pull my shoulder on pitches that are fast. I don't really want to hit his fastball, believe it or not, as much as everybody's like, hit his fastball. Like, go try to hit 97 and then change your mind and be like, nah, I'm going to hit the 88 mile an hour slider, right? Until it's in the other batter's box, of course. But, and then I'm up there and I guess right every time. I just was auto swing. I was like, I was a really good guesser. I just, I just executed very poorly on the guesses. And so, but yeah, that's always a funny story to tell just because, from an approach standpoint, also too, to give some freedom to somebody, like you can have a really good approach and just not execute too. Like my approach was on par when I tell you, like I was 100% correct of what I was hunting, what I was trying to do, setting him up, getting the pitches I wanted. I just executed poorly because of the situation emotionally and, physically, stuff like that. And so, stuff like that. But yeah. So.
Yeah, no, and then also I realized because we haven't been doing as many in person as I haven't prayed us out in a while. So you know what I'm saying? I gotta pray us out. So all right, I'll pray us out. Dear and Father God, thanks so much for all this time that we've had and just to share. We just pray that this this conversation and many more that come behind it that just help people and help different players and we just share some of the experiences that we've had and that someone can use this information to stand on our shoulders and better themselves. And we just pray that you continue to protect us and look over us and open our eyes to your perspective. And we pray all these things in Jesus' mighty name.
Amen.
Amen. Well, until next time, Farm System out.